Welcome to the In Love with PMDD podcast. I am your host, Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist, and I help you stop the monthly PMDD breakups. PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. It is in approximately 1 in 5 women, and it makes you want to break up with your partner approximately 1 to 2 weeks before your period every single month. So as someone who has suffered with PMDD for over 18 years, I dedicated my doctorate practice to helping partners navigate those monthly PMDD breakups with everything from attachment styles, triggers, sensitivity to noise, sensitivity to touch, all of the things that you really struggle with when you're in PMDD. And I also dedicated my dissertation to a phenomenological study of the relationship experiences of partners of individuals who suffer with premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So I'm not just here to help the sufferer, the one who is suffering with PMDD. I am here for the partners as well. So if you need those private sessions, make sure you go to inlovewithpmdd.com and get those tools. So let's get into this week's PMDD trauma transformational tools that is going to help you stop the monthly breakups and stop the suffering and stress in your PMDD relationship. Let's get into it. This is one of the hardest episodes that I have had to record, and I'm going to be really honest with you that I wasn't really sure how to share any of what has been going on with me, but I know that I needed to share it because I've shared my relationship with you this whole time. And I've been going through a really hard time. If you're in the Breakup Proof Academy, you've seen me show up in states that what I would consider not in the best space, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. And I think that that has become my safe place of really talking about the intricate details of what's been going on with me and my PMDD partner. And now I'm in this place where, as things have come to an end, I don't even know where to begin from here, because I feel like before I wasn't in a place of accepting that it was ending. I was really in this place of, this is going to be a story of how, we got through this, and I'm going to keep using the tools. And I think it's really hard as a practitioner, as a doctor, to see the transformations of so many of my private clients, see them use my tools, see their relationships, get better and go from a place of despair and, heartbreak, and then go from a place of healing and really like getting better. And I think as I was seeing these transformations, it was reigniting, that kind of like the belief and hope in my own relationship. Like, of course, it's going to work for us because it's working for everybody else. I know the tools work as long as we work them. And I think what was going on over the course of time, and I would say months, I remember, because I'm looking back, I cannot believe that we're beginning a new year. I remember specifically holidays and trips, and just making a lot of excuses and saying, oh, we're just going through a hard time because of this. One of the biggest things was my PMDD partner was experiencing a lot of stress with work, and then he had health issues, with the tumor scare, with the cancer, and getting his gallbladder removed. And I kept associating all of the issues that we were having within our PMDD relationship with those things. And I really got to a point where I recognized it, even before the health scares, even before, the work stress. It was starting to become more frequent. I don't even know specifically what to call them. And I'm going to be documenting this in a way that I really just need to get it all out. It's going to be a therapeutic process for me, because I never thought that I was going to have to relive any of what I had gone through, because I thought I was going to move forward. I always thought we were going to be better. So I get back together or be together. And so I assumed that everything that we were going through was just going to be part of like a testimony, like, yeah, we got through this and you can too, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself to hurry up and get over certain things so that I can, move forward and fix it. And I remember just up until this last trip, which was it was so many final straws, but I feel like I just kept thinking, I can do this. I can do this. I can get through this. I can endure this. And I didn't notice myself changing in the process. I didn't notice it. And only people that were really close to me were noticing. One of the first things that they noticed over um the months was that there was this level of I know I did an episode on overthinking, but it wasn't just overthinking because of PMDD. I was second guessing myself as a person. My self-esteem started to lower because I was no longer confident in my abilities because my own relationship was failing. So I was it made me second guess, like, wait a minute, I know that these tools work. Why wouldn't they work on my own relationship? Maybe it's me. Maybe I need to do something more. And so I began to force myself to do so many things to try and fix it and to save it. And I remember it was taking a toll on me mentally because every time, my PMDD partner would come to visit, I would have this high level of anxiety, this high level of pressure of like, it has to go this way. It has to be this way. We have to work it out. We have to, the visit needed to look a certain way in order for me to feel like we were going to make it. And I set up things, in place. I planned trips. I planned date nights. I planned all of these things. And I think when I received criticism and when I received feedback from my PMDD partner that this wasn't enough, he wasn't happy with me. He wasn't happy with the home. He wasn't happy with, the way things were. He wasn't feeling loved and all of these things that I was hearing, it was tearing me down and making me feel like I needed to do more. So when I went into PMDD, that's when this overthinking would happen where I was putting so much pressure, like, I need to do this, I need to do this. And and it and I just every time we would have a visit and after he would leave, he would say, oh, I didn't feel loved, and oh, I needed more support, or I needed it to look a certain way. I started to feel like a failure. And I started to get to a point where I was feeling like helpless in a sense of, I don't think that there's anything that I could do that could make him be happy with me at this point. And I remember thinking that, and then I would shake it off. I would just like, no, 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 I can do something more. And so I would go back to the drawing board and I would do things differently. And I wasn't really checking in with myself during this process. I wasn't checking in with how it was damaging me, how it was depleting me. I just kept putting the focus on him. But then I was always told that I wasn't putting the focus on him, that I wasn't doing enough for him. So it was kind of making me in this place of I don't know, like, I was bewildered in a sense. I remember so many times I would have these moments of just standing in the shower and crying and letting the water literally wash over my face and just feeling like, what more can I do? Like almost beating myself up in a sense of like, Rose, you need to fix this. Like, you need to do better. Like, you need to make your partner feel loved. This is what you do, like, you can't fail at this. This is what you do. If anybody does this, it's you. You can't break up. I mean, you're the one telling everyone else not to break up. Like, what would that look like? Then there was that pressure of having to explain where I was in my journey of really saying, like, how can I possibly say that I broke up with my PMDD partner when I'm consistently telling other PMDD partners not to break up? Like, what would that look like? So that's the overthinking that happened specifically during PMDD. that was making me be like, yeah, you're right. Like I have to fix this. I have to do better. And I think that there were moments where I was accepting, even now, it's really hard. It's really hard because I'm so protective of my PMDD or my ex PMDD partner. I'm very protective of people that I love, clients, people that I care about. And then I was kind of like, how am I going to share this journey? But I don't really even want to say any of the things that I've had to endure. I don't want to say what treatment I've received. I don't want to say what he's done. I don't want to be that person that's painting someone else in a bad light. But then how can I authentically share what I'm going through without sharing what I'm going through? Because I don't take this lightly. I don't take relationships, PMDD relationships lightly. I understand when they end what that looks like, what that feels like. But I never thought I was going to be in that place again. I thought this is it for me. This is my person. I just have to fix it. And so I I I'm going to try to explain a little bit about the ending, and then maybe it'll help you understand a little bit of what I've been going through, because there was a pattern. There was a pattern with the visits where I would always start off a visit. And I'll just give you the last one, but it'll be an indication of like pretty much what my whole year and a half has been looking like. And okay, so I just had a trip to Cabo. And before I had the trip to Cabo, Mexico, my PMDD partner, we were arguing when I was in Lake Tahoe. I was on another trip and he wasn't there. And there was a lot of work drama and stuff that I don't even know that I can disclose because there's legalities to it at this point, which I wasn't aware was going to be a thing. So I was still in this place of just feeling like we just need to get back on the same page. We just need a win. We just need to just get, like, we need one trip. In my mind, one good trip of reconnecting was really going to just help us, and we could just get over this rough patch, which I called it a patch. I believe it was back earlier in the year, but the patch had gone on for literally the whole year. So it wasn't just a rough patch, but that's what I was holding on to. And so I went to Mexico and I said, there was on my trip to Tahoe, there was a list of demands that my PMDD partner gave me and said that I needed to pretty much abide by in order to save the relationship. And I agreed. I agreed because I wanted to save my relationship. And I'm actually going to bring it up right now because I don't want to like misquote. That was another thing that I was like, let me make sure, because when you're going through a lot of things, you have a thing of like what it looks like, but then your partner does too. So what he said was, I want and need love, respect, touch, prayers, emotional support and connection, a sense of purpose and achievement, physical intimacy, and companionship. And then he said, are you willing to love and care for me the way I deserve to be loved? And then he said, like, how hard is it for you to touch the person you say that you love? And I remember reading that text and feeling like, okay, my partner's going through a really hard time, and he's consistently telling me that I'm not showing up and supporting him the way that he needs for me to support him. And I remember thinking, but I'm literally doing the best that I can. A lot of the things that started to fail within my PMDD relationship, as far as the support that I was giving my partner, was when I would go into PMDD and there were harsh words that were said to me. It was preventing me from physically opening up in a way that my partner needed. I was doing a lot of acts of service, right? So my PMDD partner's love language, I'm pretty sure it's like all of them. But at the time, he really needed physical touch. And what was preventing me from opening up in those ways, specifically during this visit that he was referencing, was the harsh words that were being spoken to me, a lot of cursing, a lot of things that were bringing up a lot of my childhood trauma. And I was being told that I just needed to get over that. I was being too sensitive and I was letting it get to me. The focus just needed to be on him. And you know, what kind of partner are you that you can't do this? And I remember giving myself literal pep talks and being like, you need to do this. You need to do this for him. But there were so many the harsh words, and this is why I did a training on this in the Breakup Proof Academy. They were literally being repeated in my mind. They were ruminated. I mean, I was starting to believe, like, how can I be physically open with a person that's calling me a piece of crap, or, you know, saying all these things about me, saying that I'm not this and I'm not that. It was destroying my self-esteem. And so when it came time to be affectionate, you know, I didn't have it in me, but I also knew that I needed to. So there was this self-awareness of feeling like I know I should be doing this. But I just didn't do it on this particular visit. Now, I don't want you to think that this went on for like months and months and months where I was like neglecting him physically. That wasn't a thing. I know there was a period of time after his surgeries where we really couldn't be intimate. And I was very understanding of that. But I think all of this really stemmed from this one visit where he was coming home after this work drama and he was really expecting a different version of me. And in his mind, I failed him and I didn't support him in the way that he needed me to. And I was held to this standard. And I remember feeling like, man, we have so many issues that we really need to deal with within our relationship that we're just piling on me. And I was trying to get to the point of really addressing a lot of the issues that we had so that we could get to that point where I could show up the way that he wanted. But he said, I don't have time to deal with the issues that we have in our relationship and deal with everything that's going on with work. So I was like at this fork in the road where it was kind of like I have to ignore the issues that I know that we have and be there for him, or else I was going to lose the relationship. I was going to lose my partner, but I also couldn't really ignore it. Like I couldn't, I'm like, I have an issue with this. I have an issue with this. Like, can we at least talk about it? Can we use the tools? And this is what I mean. I just kept thinking if we can just use the tools to get over these issues that we have, everything would be fine. But he wasn't wanting to address them. And I guess rightfully so, because of everything that he had going on, that it was just very overwhelming for him. And so I remember being on that trip in Lake Tahoe and him texting me that message. And I was just like really trying to to really to really get to a place where I could basically ignore how I was feeling, ignore my emotions, and just be there for him. And so he was asking me that question, like, can you treat me the way, he wanted me to love and respect him in the way that he needed? And he made it seem like it was so easy. So then I felt like, man, I should be able to do this. And so it was a follow-up, message that says, if you're not willing to treat me with the love and respect that I deserve, then go ahead and divorce me. And I remember reading that, like, are we, like, what? Are we really at this place? Like, after all, I had endured. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, we can't get to this place. So when I was deciding to go to Mexico and I invited him and he was like, why do you want me to go to Mexico? We were just like talking about divorce. And I'm like, you know what? No, this is going to be the trip um, that we're going to go on. That's really going to help us. I said, it's going to be no drama. Please just come. Everything's going to be great. And so he agreed to come. And that was pretty much the beginning of the end. Um, but I didn't know it. I thought it was the beginning of like a new chapter where we were just going to move forward. And when he came, it was my birthday trip, right? And so during my birthday trip, they had wrote like happy birthday on the bed, and they wrote it in these beautiful colorful rocks. And I was like, oh, I know what I can do with them. I can kind of put them in a I can put them in the ice bucket and save them, so when he came the next day I could just write on the bed. And I redid it the next day and put Rose loves Jamil, which is my PMDD partner. And I was like, he's going to be so happy with this. I planned excursions to go ATV riding, to go camel riding, to go swimming with the dolphins, to go zip lining, like all of these things, because I really was just in that mindset of thinking, if we can just have a really good time and have fun like we used to, then we can get past all of the issues, and maybe he'll be in a place of really being open to just talk about our issues. And maybe this is just what we need. And so when he came the next day, and, he came and saw the bed, and I was like, hey, did you see the bed and everything? And he was just kind of like underwhelmed. Like, yeah, I saw it. I was like, do you want to take a picture of it? Because, you know, um, housekeeping was going to come in and, basically like erase it all. And he just was like, oh, I already took a picture. And I was like, okay. So I kind of took a picture of us, and like I was trying to recreate these happy moments, even though I genuinely didn't feel happy. I mean, when he walked into the hotel room, there was no affection, there was no hug, there was no kiss, there was nothing. And I remember feeling nothing, which is that's never really happened for me before, but I really just decided to ignore that. I'm just like, oh, kind of like that's a fluke, like it'll come. I just kept thinking to myself, it'll come, the feelings will come, like just do the things and the feelings will come. And so, that day he was like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. So, our daughter was there on the trip, and I was just like, oh, telling her to get ready. And so I was trying to talk to him. I was like, well, do you want to hear the itinerary of the trip? So I started saying all of these things that we had planned for the trip. And he was just underwhelmed, like he wasn't excited, he wasn't happy. And so I think I was taking every reaction that he had or didn't have as like, you're a failure, because I was in PMDD at the time. So I was really feeling like I'm doing my best, I'm trying to be loving, I'm trying to be open, I'm trying to plan these things. And he was just like, oh, okay, like we can do this or whatever. And so we went out to before we went out to eat, one of the things that he had said to me before was like, all of our trips are better, all of the visits that we have are better when we have, sex as soon as we see each other. Like, we need to have sex immediately to physically connect, and then the emotions will come. And so at that point, I wasn't into it, to be honest, because I really wasn't feeling any emotional connection. But again, I kept thinking, okay, if I just do it, the feelings will come afterwards. And so I remember I initiated, which is one of the things that he was saying that he needed me to do. So I initiated the sex, and then we started to have sex. And I remember going to kiss him. And I was like, look, like trying to kiss him, but he wasn't kissing me. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what is going on? And I literally just asked him, like, why won't you kiss me? Like, this is weird. And then he just looked at me. And then I was like, is there something in your mouth? Because his mouth, like, he never really opened his mouth to answer me. He was just staring at me. And again, this is, while we're in the bed, like having sex or whatever. So I'm like, why, what is going on? And then I went and he opened his mouth, and he had these two nicotine patches in his mouth. And I was like, what is going on? And he was like, these are nicotine patches. And I was like, what? And he was like, it's not tobacco. And I was like, what? Like, I was just confused, bewildered, like, what is going on? Why would, in my mind, especially my PMDD brain, I'm like, why would you get into bed to have sex with your partner with like nicotine patches in your mouth? Like, what were you thinking, we were never gonna kiss? Like, I was never gonna, like, or was I supposed to kiss you with the patches in your mouth? Like, I was very confused. It's like, what is going on? And so after that happened, he took them out and placed them on the bed. And so at that point, I was completely, honestly disgusted, because I don't like smoking. I don't like nicotine. I don't like tobacco. I don't like any of that. It's a big turn off for me. He knows that. And I was like, why would you have nicotine? He was like, I'm stressed. And I'm thinking to myself, you're in Mexico. Like, what are you stressed about? Is it work? Like, I'm trying to connect with you. I'm trying to relieve your stress. I'm trying to be there for you. I really just didn't understand it. I didn't say any of that. I just kind of like was like looking. I felt like I was at that fork in the road where I can either stop the act that we were doing, like pretty much get up out of the bed and stop having sex, or, we could continue. But I just felt even more disconnected. Like, how would I not know that he had these things? I didn't even know he had pouches or that was a thing. So I remember I was at the fork in the road and I really just forced myself mentally, like, you need to do this, you need to do this. I was putting all this pressure on myself. So I said, okay, you just do it, right? I was literally gave myself an internal pep talk because I really just wanted this to be the trip that our relationship got back on the same page. And so I was just like, okay. And then I said something to the effect of like, can you just like, he was only going to be there for 3 days. So like 2 more days, one more day. And I was like, can you just not, have the nicotine patches on while you're here with me? Basically, I was asking so that we could kiss, so we could reconnect. And he was just like, he scoffed and kind of was like, you and your rules. And I was like, what? But I mean, I don't know. I was getting to a point where I was feeling like I wasn't allowed to ask for anything out of the relationship, and everything that I was asking was a burden. And so I was just like, okay. So I went through that, and then we continued to have sex, whatever, and there was no connection, no eye contact. I remember literally like kind of like reaching out for his face to kind of be like wanting him to just look at me, acknowledge me, connect with me, and there was nothing. I mean, he was like looking around like Ray Charles, and I was just like, what, like almost avoiding me, but while he was, essentially inside of me. And I remember feeling so disgusted with myself, so devalued, so ashamed, so I don't know. I just felt horrible. And I remember when it was over, he immediately got out of the bed and like put his clothes back on. And I was just laying there and I just felt like, honestly, I felt like an unpaid whore. I was just like disgusted with myself. And I was almost disgusted with myself because I put myself in that situation. I wasn't really blaming him in the moment. I was kind of like, why would you allow this to happen? Like, I already was feeling bad, but this just literally made me feel even worse. And so I got up and I went to the bathroom and cleaned myself up, and we went to lunch, and I was just thinking, okay, how can I make the best of the rest of this trip? Like I just have to keep going. I had the intrusive thoughts, the ruminating thoughts was in my mind. I was frantic. My cortisol levels were high. My heart was beating fast. I had a lot of anxiety, and I just kept, forcing myself. You got to make this work, Rose. You got to make this, you got to do this. Like, you got to do this. And so, I remember we went to go ATV riding and to camel riding, and we had to sign a waiver. And when it was time to pay for the trip, he kind of walked away and was like, I have to go to the bathroom. So of course my PMDD brain was like, wow, so now you're paying for everything. Like, he's not even going to offer to pay. Like, this is, your birthday trip, and he's making you pay for excursions. Like, everything that PMDD could grab that was negative, it grabbed. And I literally had to deal with that internally, those intrusive thoughts. And well, it wasn't even intrusive thought at this point. It was literally just magnifying the facts that were going on. So it was like $450 US for me, him, and my daughter. And after we signed the waiver, he was saying we really need to pay for insurance. I think there was like an additional like $40 or $50 for insurance. And I was like, oh, it should be fine. We're just going to do, like, they do these all the time. And he was like looking at me in disgust. Like, you're not going to, after all the stuff that's been going on with me, you're not going to pay for like, he was like, you're not going to pay for the, the the insurance. And I was like, what? So then he took out his card, but only to pay for the insurance, which I think was like $40 US. And so I was like, okay. And so again, I felt like a failure because he was making me feel like I had done something wrong, and so I was like beating myself internally again, like, you should have paid for it, like, you should have done, like, you should have just done it to make him happy. And so I went he went to the bathroom, and then after he went to the bathroom, he came back, and we went to go ride the camels first. And I thought it was so nice. We were riding the camels, and then we had to get off the camels to go on the ATV riding because we were going to do half and half. So when we were walking from the camels to the ATV riding, he was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do the ATV riding. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, because the ATVs are like these Humvees, like these combat vehicles. It's really fun. You can ride them through, this the desert, the woods, wherever we were gonna go. And I know that he loved adventure, so I was very shocked. Like, why would you not want to like ride the ATVs? He's like, oh, because I had my gallbladder removed. It can really hurt my core, like his abs, like his core. And so I was like, what? Because he had been out in the field and done so many other things with his Marine unit that I was like, how is that a thing? So I thought he was like definitely healed enough to do this. It never crossed my mind that this would even be a thing. And so I just remember him saying a comment, and he said, yeah, I just think it's really messed up that you would even choose these activities knowing that I'm like recovering from surgery. And I was like, what? Because he had been working out, he had been doing other things, he had been in the field for a month with his Marine Corps unit. And I was thinking, this is nothing compared to what they were doing out there. Like, I really didn't understand why he was kind of throwing that in my face as if I was being insensitive. And he knows I would never like do that, or did he? I don't know. But again, I was in PMDD and it was making me feel even worse about myself. It was like he would say something to criticize me, and then PMDD would take it and be like, yeah, Rose, like, how dare you? Like, what kind of PMDD partner are you? So I felt like I was being internally tortured. I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay. So then I told him, I said, well, babe, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to go on to the ATVs or anything, you don't have to do the camel riding. You don't have to do any of this. I said, we were going to be up and down the beach and around. And I said, well, you can wait here and we can just come back and get you. And he was like, no, I'll push through. And he kind of scoffed at me. And I was just like, what? Like, so now I felt like even though we were doing these excursions, like he had an attitude, so he still wasn't happy. And again, I felt like a failure. I felt horrible about myself. My self-esteem was just, I felt like the worst person ever. And so we ended up going on the ATV riding, and um so we continued on to go to the um the part of the camel ride, and he rode the camel, and I thought everything was going to be great. So I'm like, okay, well, at least he's enjoying himself at this point. I felt horrible. And then we went back to go to finish our ATV riding because it was going to be super cool because we were going to go through the woods. We were going to go through the jungle. And I went to drive, and he was like, "You're driving?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm driving." And he was like, "Oh." So he gets in the passenger seat, and he's like, this is so embarrassing. Like, I can't believe that you're driving. Like, I'm the man. I'm supposed to be driving, all of these things. So I literally got out and I was like, you can drive. So when he went to drive, all of a sudden he's like riding through the woods, going over the bumps and all the things and having a good time. And he's like, oh, this has a really good throttle and all of these things. And I was just looking over like, what happened to, his core? Like, I thought he said this was going to hurt his core. And then I guess he like thought about that, and he made a comment and said, it's easier when I drive because I can expect, the bumps and stuff like that. But when you drive, I really can't. And so that's why it's not bothering my core now. And so I was like, what? So I was just completely triggered because I felt like everything I was doing was being taken for granted, was being criticized. I just felt horrible about myself. And I felt like it was just too much, like everything I was doing, nothing was good enough. Nothing was good enough. Like, that's how I felt. Like, that was the theme. Everything I was doing, nothing was good enough. And so we go back, and after we finish, my daughter started to not really feel well. So I took her back to the hotel, and we were going to go out to dinner. And when we went out to dinner, he had made a comment out of nowhere. Like, I'm like looking at the menu at the place we went to dinner, and he's like, I don't care if you go next year. I don't care if you go with me next year. I'm going home for Thanksgiving. And this was on Thanksgiving Day. And I was just like, okay, like, I didn't know where his head was. I'm like, we can go home like to your family's house, for Thanksgiving. And I just was like, yeah, me, I like to go on trips because I normally, ever since, we've been married and together, like we've always gone on a trip somewhere. So I really didn't understand where that was coming from. But he was like, yeah, I'm going to go home. I just really need to spend some time with my family. You know, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year. And he was just going on and on and on about Thanksgiving. And I was like, okay, again, I was feeling like a failure because here we are on Thanksgiving. We just did camel riding, ATV riding in Mexico, and you're telling me you would rather be at home with your family instead of here with me, aka your family, while we're at dinner on Thanksgiving. So I was just like, this was just more of a way that he was expressing his dissatisfaction with me as a wife, as a family member, like all of the things. And I was just like, okay. And so, I made a comment. I was like, yeah, I like to, I like to go on trips, because I have time off from work. And so I can just go and blah, blah, blah and have fun. I said, yeah, I said, even, because my other sisters, they go on trips during Thanksgiving too. They go on a cruise. And it's just like something that we do. We just like to travel during Thanksgiving. And then he said, yeah, well, I already know why you like to travel during Thanksgiving. That's because of your childhood trauma. So, for those of you that haven't heard my past episodes, I was adopted at the age of 5. I was in foster care at the age of 3. I was adopted at the age of 5. I grew up in um, my adopted home where I was verbally and physically abused. And at the age of 17, I was kicked out of the house. That's when I joined the military, and it was abusive and it was horrible. So, I don't have a home to go to during the holidays because my biological family pretty much abandoned me and my adopted family pretty much abandoned me. So m- I'm not sure if me traveling during holidays is a coping mechanism because I had no choice. But I also think it's also part of my personality because I love to travel anyway. But I felt like he was throwing that in my face. And I had been open and vulnerable with him about obviously my childhood. Um, and so he knew that about me. And so when he said that, I was like, what? Like, why would wh- he knows anytime he mentions childhood trauma, that's like a trigger for me because that's something that it took me a long time to overcome, a long time to heal from. And a lot of times when I'm in PMDD, that used to be the one thing that used to come up for me was my childhood trauma. And so it took me a while that even though I had gone to therapy, counseling, all these things to heal from my childhood trauma, PMDD had a way of bringing it back out of me. And so when he said that comment, I immediately shut down because I don't know, I just felt like that was below the belt. Like I didn't understand what I had even done to deserve that. Like I was like, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not fighting with you. Like we're just having a conversation. And so I just shut down. And as soon as I shut down, he was like, oh, here you go again. Every single time you're in PMDD, you shut down, you do this, you don't know how to have conversations. You say that we need to talk, you say that we need to communicate, but it always ends up like this. And here you go. And I was literally sitting there taking it and taking it and taking it, these comments. And I felt PMDD rage come up. And I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't felt that level of PMDD rage for years. And the kind of PMDD rage where you feel like you're about to flip a table. Like that's how I felt. And I was literally like, Rose, don't do it. Don't react. Don't do it. Like I was using all of the tools that I give to my clients. I was literally using all of them at once at that point. And I think being that my body was in PMDD rage and I had no outlet. I couldn't just walk away. I couldn't just do, I was sitting at a 5-star restaurant. The waiter had came over and was like, "Oh, are you not enjoying your food?" I had stopped eating. I was done. And I remember just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, why am I being tortured? Like, I felt like I had done something, but I didn't do anything. And so I just walked back to, we walked back to the resort and we went to sleep and that night I was like my mind in PMDD was just racing. I took a shower and again I was standing in the shower just I started to feel numb. I started to have these moments, which had happened over the months, of just having these moments where I was staring into nothingness and I was feeling numb. I would go from intense emotional pain to just feeling like I wasn't really there, really disassociating. And so I took a shower, I got into bed, and he was snoring. I remember he was snoring, and I'm past the point of even mentioning it now, because I was like, I guess I'm just not going to say anything. So I tried to put my headphones on. I tried to, because he had brought a mouth guard, because one of the things that I had brought up to him was like that we need to work on in our relationship was, the snoring, because when I have lack of sleep and I'm in PMDD, it's really harder for me to just exist. And so he one of the first things he said when he came in was like, I brought a mouth guard, but that particular night, like, I looked over on the dresser and the night guard that he had brought was like on the dresser and he was in the bed snoring. And I was like, well, what was the purpose of that? Um, so I laid in the bed and I was trying to sleep and I couldn't sleep, but I was so exhausted. I feel like my body was just wanting to shut down and sleep, but I couldn't. And he was snoring and all of the things. And so the morning had come. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was just shuffling in the bed, just shuffling. And then I look over at him and he was like, I'm not even asleep. And I was like, what? He's like, I know you're about to say that I was snoring. I'm not even sleeping, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I didn't say anything. And for a fact, he was snoring, but I didn't say anything. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to get up and go to the gym. So I went to go to the gym. I was getting dressed and I came back and told him, hey, we have to be ready at 8 o'clock in order to go swimming with the dolphins. Cause I had booked 2 excursions and for that day it's swimming with the dolphins and zip lining. And he turned over and said, I'm not going. And I was like, what? And he's like, he wasn't going like to swim with the dolphins. And so I said, so are you going home? Like, I'm very confused because in my mind, everyone in this hotel room is going like, I paid for 3 people to go on this excursion to swim with the dolphins. The whole family's going to swim with the dolphins. What other reason, like, why would you not be going? Like, are you leaving early? Because there's been times and trips where he's left early. So I'm like, maybe he just decided he didn't want to be here. I was like, are you leaving early? And he was like, here you go again, about to kick me out. Because every single time he's left in the past, it's been turned around that I've kicked him out, even though it's been normally we're in an argument and then he just leaves, but he'll say that I kicked him out. So that was like the theme. So he was like, here you go again. You're in PMDD and you're about to kick me out. And I'm like, I never even told you to leave. Like, what are you talking? I was like, I was asking you because you're saying you're not going swimming with the dolphins. So he was just like, ugh, blah, blah, blah. So I just literally left I told my daughter, like, go ahead and lay back down, go to sleep. Like, we're not going on to swim with the dolphins, all the things. And so I went down to the concierge and I canceled the excursions, lost the money, like all the things, like, again, more money down the drain, like hundreds of dollars down the drain. And I went to go work out. And I remember sweating and working out and crying, breaking down crying because I just felt like, I don't know. I was like, what? I felt like I was being tortured. I was like, what is going on? Like, and this is not even mentioning like PMDD symptoms. Like, this is just, this is just me trying to understand what is going on in my PMDD relationship. Why is he not happy? That, I think that was the basis of it. Why am I not good enough? I kept asking myself, why is what I'm giving not good enough? Why are my efforts not good enough? They were all coming from a genuine place. I wasn't faking it. I, I don't know. I wasn't getting anything out of it. It wasn't self-serving, all of these things. And so I was in the gym and I was working out and I remember I was walking back to get some water and he tapped me. He was actually, so somebody tapped me and then I looked over and it was him in the gym and he wasn't working out with me at all. Like, I was like, what is he doing in the gym? So he kind of, looked over at me and then so he started texting my phone, like, why are you trying to fight with me? Why do you want to fight with me? I don't want to fight with you. This is supposed to be a trip about us. Like, all of the, I was like, what? No one's fighting with you, sir. Like, what? I was very confused because I was not fighting with him, but he was saying that I was fighting with him. And I felt like I don't know what to do with this. So I was very, again, triggered that we weren't going on the trip because I had did this for him, I did this for us, and I had to cancel, and nothing I was doing was good enough. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do nothing at this point, because every single thing that I've done has been turned into a failure. It made me feel like I began to feel like literal crap, like I was the worst person ever. And so I I just continued to work out, and I just ignored the text or whatever. And then I started to leave the gym, and he started following me. He was like, "So what time are we leaving?" And I was like, I thought I was in the twilight, like, leaving for what? And he was like, "What time are we going to the Dolphins?" And I was like, and I thought it was a joke, because literally I told him to get ready so that we can go to the Dolphins. He told me he wasn't going. Then I canceled it. And then he says, "What time are we going?" So I was like, I said, "We're not going on any excursions today." So he was like, "Oh, good. You want to go get some coffee? You want to go get breakfast?" I was like, "What are you?" No. I said, "No, I don't want to get breakfast." I said, please just don't talk to me right now," because I was still just trying not to react to any of the triggers that I was feeling. I didn't even want to talk about how I was feeling, because I felt like it was going to be further invalidated. And I was going to be told that I was a problem, and I was going to be told that I'm doing everything wrong. So I went to walk towards, the hotel room, and he was just following behind me. And we go into the hotel room, and I start to take my headphones off and get ready to take a shower. And then he says, "Hey, gosh, this is him talking, by the way. I'm going to do my best like impression." He was like, "Oh, so crazy. I keep seeing everybody, walk around here with these Starbucks cups. Like, I wonder where they're getting these Starbucks cups from." And he was being very loud and dramatic, and like literally like a scene from Broadway. And I was like, so then my daughter was like, "I'm pretty sure there's a Starbucks in the resort." Like, she pretty much answered, because I was just silent. Like, what is going on? Like, I was like, is everything okay? So he was like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go get some coffee." And then he's like, "Babe, do you want some coffee?" And I was like, I kind of shook my head, no. And then he started to tap me on my shoulder. It was like, "Hey, do you want some coffee? Do you want me to get you a cup of coffee?" And I looked at him, and I literally yelled, and I was like, "I don't want any coffee. I asked you when we were in the hallway to not speak to me. I just need a moment." And then he kind of like looked at me like he was shocked, and he was like, "Oh, okay, well, text me if you change your mind." And he was like so happy, and like left the hotel room. And again, I found myself in the shower, like standing there crying, like, what is going on? I get out the shower, and I have a text from him, and he's like, "I think it's really sad that you yelled at me in front of your daughter. Like, it's very disrespectful. Like, it's really sad to see that side of you," or something. And I was like, "What?" Like, I asked you, like, I didn't respond, but in my mind, I asked you to leave me alone and to just give me a moment. I wasn't bothering you. Like, I just didn't respond, and I just decided, my daughter was laying down, and she didn't feel up to getting breakfast. So I said, "I'll go get you breakfast." I went across the street to one of the cafes and got her a crepe. And I remember sitting by myself at this table for two. And I was sitting right in the sun, and I really just didn't care. And I was just sitting there, and I began crying. And I don't even think I was protecting myself from anyone seeing me cry. And people were probably, no, they were definitely looking at me like I was insane. And I just remember feeling numb again, feeling numb, but then also it was I've never had an experience like that, where I felt numb, but my body was expressing emotion. Like, I was crying, but I felt dead inside. Literally, like, I was like, what is going on? So I get her breakfast, I take it back inside, and I decide, you know what, my day is through. Like, I don't have the energy. My body started to feel really heavy. So I went and I laid down, and I closed the curtains, right? I closed the curtains um to the room, and so they have blackout curtains, and I got into bed and I slept. And then when I woke up at like midday, my partner was like, "I'm at the pool." And so he was at the pool. He was, having a good time in Mexico. And I just remember when I went back to sleep, because if when you're depressed, you can go in and out of sleep. And I just went back in and out of sleep. And then I woke up around dinner time. He was still gone. And so I went out to go get dinner for myself. We were supposed to go on a birthday dinner. I had asked him to bring like a nice outfit. I had a pretty birthday dress. I just looked around. I'm like, I guess I'm going by myself. So I just put on t-shirts and a tank top and I went and I had dinner alone. And my birthday was the 29th, and this was at this point, it was the 26th. But my partner was leaving the next day and we were supposed to have dinner. He knew that, but I don't know. He was still at the pool or exploring the resort. It was a beautiful resort. I don't know. So then I started getting all these texts from him and my daughter, like, where are you? Where are you? And I was like, oh, I told my daughter I'm getting food. And she's like, oh, like he's looking for you. And I was like, I'll text him, don't worry. But I just remember feeling like, I don't want to go back there and go off on him. I don't want to go back. I didn't even know if I had the energy to go off, but I just didn't. I didn't even want to address the fact of where were you all day long, where you're supposed to be on this trip with me. I don't know. I just had a very bad feeling. I had a bad feeling, like a gut bad feeling. And then all after all his texts, the last text that he was saying, he's like, I'm gonna leave you with this. Trust me, the grass isn't greener on the other side. I had no idea what he was talking about. I don't know what grass he was. We were on a beach. Like what grass? What have you been doing all day? Like I don't even think I had the energy to even want to know. So I go back and I ask my daughter, can I sleep in your bed? Because by the time I got back from dinner, he was in the bed snoring. He was out. And I was just like, I can't go through another night of, the previous night of not getting sleep. I was exhausted again. So she let me sleep in her bed. I woke up in the morning. He was gone. He texted me, I'm on my way to the airport, or I'm at the airport. And he had bought me a hat from the gift shop, a birthday card, and the key to the hotel room was sitting on the bed. And I was just like, I didn't know how I felt about him not waking me up at least to say goodbye, but there had already been no affection. Like, I don't know. I was just like, I don't know. So I took the next couple of days while I was in Mexico and I really just decided to take a break and a pause from everything that was going on because I felt like I needed to be present for, my daughter. I didn't want to just ruin everything, but I just remember just like, I need a break. I need a break. I felt like I was getting drugged through the mud for something that I really just didn't know what I was doing. I was like, what am I doing that's so wrong? And so, I did that and then I ended up going home and I remember I was in PMDD still and then all of a sudden I started bleeding. I started spotting and I was nowhere near my period. I had like 9, 10 more days. And I remember doing my vlogging that I do on Instagram, like I'm this many days in PMDD and I was like, well, this is how am I saying this? But I'm bleeding. I've never been bleeding so like in PMDD. So I remember waiting and waiting, thinking it was going to go away because it was light. So I was like, okay, maybe my cycle's coming early. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I ended up going to the doctor because it hadn't stopped. And that's when I went to the doctor and I found out that I had an early miscarriage. And I was in shock because I just couldn't, me and my PMDD partner weren't speaking after he left from Mexico. And then we hadn't spoken even on my birthday. He just texted me happy birthday. And I was like, thank you. There was no call. There was nothing. Like it was as if I had done something so horrible. And now I was in this place of feeling like, wait, we haven't even spoken. But we had a conversation the day before, 2 days before I went to the hospital. And he had basically said, we were supposed to go on a trip for Christmas. And he said, oh, by the way, I called to check on him because he hadn't called and checked on me. So I was like, let me just call to check on him. And I said, hey, how's everything going? He was like, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm getting back on my feet. He's working out again. He's feeling good about himself, all of these things. And I was just like, I was feeling like, wow, like he was feeling great and I was feeling horrible. And I really just didn't understand. There was like this transfer of energy because I remember before he had arrived in Mexico, I was feeling great. But now I was in this place where I was drowning emotionally and mentally and now physically. And then he's thriving. And so he's like, what's going on with you? And I was like, oh, I'm, working, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's like, okay, cool. And then he was like, well, by the way, I'm not going to Mexico because we were supposed to go for Christmas. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm pretty sure you're tracking that. And I was like, why would I be tracking that? We haven't spoken. Like, again, what are you talking about? Because again, I had prepaid for us to go to Mexico at this all-inclusive resort for Christmas. And he was like, well, I just thought that was implied. I was like, why would, and he was like, I'm going home with my family. I just really need to be around people who appreciate me. And again, I was back in that place of like, what is I felt so discarded. So, and then he's like, okay, well, we also need to have a conversation about pretty much how we're going to end things, how that's going to look like logistically, like with the paperwork about. And then he says, by the way, are you doing my taxes this year? So every year I've done his taxes since we've been married and blah, blah. And so I have all his paperwork and stuff. And I was like, yes, I'll do your taxes. I'll close out everything. There's a couple of bills that I pay for. He doesn't pay any of my bills, but I pay a couple of his bills. And so I was like, pretty much a cell phone. I was like, oh, we're just going to you just need to transfer your number over. The car insurance, you have to transfer that over to your account. So we're basically talking about the divorce, but in a way that was just very like, he was saying it like it was implied, but he never, like, I know he had mentioned it before on the trip, but he didn't tell me that that was the conclusion that he had come to. He was just pretty much like, yeah, I guess he decided when he left Mexico that that was it. But he never said that that was it. But I guess, again, in his mind, it was implied. So I just was like, okay. And so I was like, well, we can talk on Saturday. And he was like, okay, cool. And so I had went to the doctor's on that Thursday. And that's when I found out that I had the miscarriage. And I felt like, well, I guess I'll tell him about it on Saturday. I mean, not that he was checking on me. We had no text or voice communication anyway. So I was just like, well, I guess it really doesn't matter. And I asked the doctor, like, how could this happen? She said, have you been under any stress? And I remember breaking down, like, yes. And I remember I could barely even get the words out because I was so choked up because in my mind, I was thinking that it was my fault again. That because I was so stressed out that I couldn't hold on to the baby. And so I just remember feeling that fear of this is going to be another thing that I'm going to get blamed for. I'll tell him about it and then he'll blame me for killing our baby. And I just remember thinking, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get over that being said to me? Because we had tried so hard. And I couldn't believe we had tried so hard to have a baby. And then the fact that I finally do get pregnant right when the relationship ends was just torturous. So I I'm not in a place of even, I don't even know if I'm in a place of healing. I'm in a place of mourning. I'm in a place of mourning. And I said all this because I try to use everything that I tell you with what goes on with me to utilize one of my tools or to benefit you in some kind of way. And what I want you to just really get from my story, my situation, what I have going on, um, is I really, really, really wanted to rush past the hurt, rush past the healing, I have an avoidant, attachment style when I'm in PMDD. And so I was really in this place of not wanting to feel. So what I have for you today is whatever it is that you're going through, you have to really understand what is going on with you emotionally when you're dealing with whatever it is that you're going through with your PMDD partner. You can't rush the process. You can't speed past the phases of grief. You can't speed past the phases of heartbreak. If you're dealing with some really heavy things in your PMDD relationship with which a lot of my private clients are, there are stages of grief, there's stages of healing, there's stages of even just understanding what is going on with you emotionally, checking in with yourself emotionally. Because when you've been hurt by your PMDD partner, when you've been hurt by things that are going on in your relationship, there's more to the pain than just one event. Remember, if you're listening to my story, there's multiple things that happened. And again, this is just one example of many that have been going on with my PMDD partner. But I just want you to understand that there can be a compilation of a lot of things that you've gone through over the months, over the years, over the days, over the weeks, and emotions. The emotions that you've been feeling are just like a mishmash of what has happened in your past. Your pain in the present, your fears of the futures, and your interpretation of what you interpret what every event meant for you. And you have to really go back through those events and say, what do I think was happening in that moment? Right? That's what I'm going to have to do in my healing journey, is really think about, out of everything that happened, I created a meaning towards it. You know, when he brought up the comment about my childhood trauma, I put a meaning towards that. I felt devalued. I felt not safe. I felt not protected. I felt there's emotions that I tied to everything. And when your partner does something or says something to you, you tell yourself a story as to why they did it. And in order to heal from having any bitterness and resentment towards your PMDD partner, you have to ask yourself, what is that story that I'm telling myself about what my PMDD partner did? What is that story that I'm telling myself about what my PMDD partner said? And really go through the act of addressing your PMDD partner and really asking them, is this what you mean? Is this what you meant when you said this to me? Because when you experience some kind of betrayal, if you discover that, okay, my PMDD partner said this to me, so I feel betrayed by them, or I feel devalued by them, or I feel underappreciated by them. Being that this is your person, it hurts you on a deeper level, especially when you're in PMDD. And it really hurts so much to wonder if you can ever make it past that emotion that you've tied to it. And a lot of times that pain is by more than just one event. And I have to put myself through this process of uncovering and this could be for weeks, for months, for years. When you're talking about healing from past emotional trauma that you've dealt with in your PMDD relationship, you have to go back and uncover those hurtful conversations, uncover those hurtful words, uncover those hurtful actions, and do so in a way that's going to help you to move past it. I would love to be in this place of saying, you know what, I just want to wash my hands of this and move forward and not have to deal with it ever again. But you know what's going to happen if I was to do that without healing first is I'm going to carry that with me everywhere that I go. And it's just going to be in my backpack. I always think of it like a backpack where I have all of this stuff after this relationship. I have all of this stuff in my backpack, and I'm not taking the time to take out the rocks out of my backpack. The rocks are the things that harden your heart. They literally make you feel bitter. They make you feel resentful. They make you shut down. They make you guarded. They make you feel unsafe. They make you feel like you can't open up to anyone else. They make you feel like you need to be on guard. You need to judge other people the way that you felt judged. It makes you act a different way, portray different personality traits that you may not necessarily have. And I remember through this whole process, a lot of times I've been making excuses for a lot of the behaviors and the words that have been said, like, oh, it's because of this and oh, it's because of that. And I've done that for a reason. I've tried to make excuses because I've not wanted to be bitter. I know it would be so easy for me to take this and be bitter and resentful and, you know, think about after all I did for you and after all, because what the first thing that I needed to understand is My ex-PMDD partner has a version of this story that is probably completely different because what he is experiencing is not my experience. What he is feeling is not what I'm feeling. And remember, I did that episode on hurt people, hurt PMDD partners, hurt PMDD partners, hurt their PMDD partners. That was a lot of times where I was trying to rationalize the process of what I was going through, and being able to communicate and tell you and see, like, I know that my PMDD partner is hurting me because he's hurting. And he may not even have seen it in the moment. And right now, I'm not expecting, I really am not expecting anything at this point. I feel like it's a very individualistic journey that we probably are both going to have to go on. And my hope for him in this whole thing is to be self-aware, to hold himself accountable. I'm holding myself very much accountable that there was a lot of times where he needed me, and the way that I am in PMDD perhaps was just not a way that he could endure. You know, I'm gonna go deeper into that probably on the next episode, but I just really want to go through this healing journey without hardening my heart towards him or anyone else. I know I've told my best friends about it, and they're like, how there's the audacity and all of these things that could be said, that I could say, that I could take and run with, but I really just want my heart to stay pure. I love. I believe in PMDD relationships. I believe in fighting for your relationship. I believe in not breaking up. And I think one of the mistakes that I made was I did a lot of things in the ending part of this journey that I wouldn't have advised my PMDD partners to do. Like when I forced myself to be intimate, when I didn't feel safe, when I didn't feel loved, when I didn't feel cared for, when it's different if you go into PMDD and you're not feeling emotions. And so you're feeling like, oh, I don't want to, be intimate. Like that's one thing. But if you're in a place where you're genuinely not feeling safe, you're not feeling connected, and you're not even in the act, I would never have told a private client to just get back in the game, get back in there, go finish the job. Like I wouldn't have done that. I think that's where a lot of the pressure and the stress and how my adrenals reacted about everything that was going on in my body, I think that's where it came from. It came from the forcing. And as I go through this journey of really uncovering things, I just want you to know I'm taking a lot of accountability for everything that happened, my part in it. But I really did try my best, and I really did not think that this was going to be the outcome. I think I'm still in shock, but I really just needed to communicate where I am because things are going to look different. So if you're following my journey and things look different, I'm going to have to do a whole rebranding, and I don't want you to be really confused as to what's going on because a lot of everything that I even do in my business is surrounded by my partner or my ex. I'm still saying it. Like I've just not gotten to that place where I can even, a lot of the things I honestly don't have answers to either, which is very daunting when you're dealing with PMDD because you kind of just want to know the why behind it. And right now I can be honest with you and tell you I don't know the why behind of a lot of things, but I do know that I am mourning and I feel like my heart is literally breaking. And it's one of the worst feelings that I've ever had. And I think I never thought I was going to, being that I never thought that I was going to feel this way probably makes it feel even worse. But what you can take out of this episode and this part of my journey is really whatever it is that you're going through, unpack it, feel it, Don't avoid the negative feelings. I know a lot of times you don't want to sit in the negative emotions, and I don't really want to call them negative emotions, just the emotions that are not comfortable. You don't want to sit in it. You want to skip it. It's not going anywhere. Take the time, deal with what you have to deal with. If you need help, you know I'm always here, inlovewithpmdd.com. Book those private sessions. I'm still very much here for my private clients. I actually have a private client right after this. So I'm going to end this with feel what you're going through. Know that it's going to take time to process, but you need to go through the process, and you may not always know why things happen in the moment, but it's going to be okay. And when I'm saying that to you, I'm saying it to me too. We got this. I hope this PMDD episode helped you and your partner in your struggles within your relationship. And if this is something that you know that you need help with and you need further support, individualized support, make sure you're going to inlovewithpmdd.com and you're getting those private sessions to really work through what you're going through in your relationship, specifically in regards to PMDD. And also, I want you to leave a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. What this does is it helps other PMDD sufferers and partners find this show that can help them get these free PMDD relationship tools. I remember what it felt like to not know that there were tools out there specifically for PMDD relationships. So I want to make sure that you are sharing these tools with others, share them on your social media, share them with people that you know that are also struggling in their PMDD relationships. Until next episode, this is Dr. Rose, your PMDD relationship psychotraumatologist. One more thing, I almost forgot. I now have the Fresh Start PMDD Partners Workbook. What this workbook can do is if you've had past traumatic experiences with your partner, past fights, past arguments, and they keep coming up every single month in PMDD, I created a Fresh Start Workbook so that you can deal with all of the traumatic experiences that have happened in the past in PMDD rage and all of these things so you can stop going through the same cycle again and again and again. So get that workbook. It comes with a video episode of the actual podcast that I recorded on getting a fresh start in your PMDD relationship. So you're not continuing the same cycle again and again and again. So make sure that you get that workbook. And if you need those individualized counseling sessions, you know where to go, inlovewithpmdd.com. Until next time, we got this. Love you.